Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles in my garage. I'm hanging out with the guy series. I'm the guy. So looking at bikes that I've been purchasing lately, I've been going over little details here and there of what I do and what I come across. I picked up the Dura-Ace from an individual in Denver. And Dura-Ace is a great brand. It's a full carbon frame, fork, and seat post. When I worked at Elite Cyclery, we carried Dura-Ace, which is an excellent bike to see when they're new, and also they hold up very well today. It's a Spaniard brand, and they're still around today, so that makes them pretty awesome rides. On this particular one, it has Ultegra mix with I think 105 wheels, something of that nature. Also FSA crank. You'll see bikes that have mixed componentry on it, and they were probably spec'd that way a lot of the times. Not saying that somebody hasn't switched out parts, but sometimes it's actually a spec sheet. That's what the bike came with. So when I started to dive into this bike, and I came across something that was kind of interesting. I came across it before, and I was like, oh, whoa, hold on here. We need to shoot this because it's a topic that's come up recently a couple times, and something I want to talk about briefly is pedals. This guy, he put on individual pedals that were just for test rides, he said, because he apparently used clipless, which is pretty common when I come across that. So one thing to keep in mind, that pedals are right threaded and left threaded. So in other words, one's opposite threading. And when you're looking at a bike, when you look at it head on, you have a right and a left, but when you're sitting on it, you have a right and a left. So when they're referring to right side of the bike, right shifter, right pedal, that kind of thing, is when you're actually sitting on the bike. So your right foot, that's the right side of the pedal. Right hand, right shifter, right? Okay, so then opposite is the left. So pedals are the same, R and L, L and R, and they'll be stamped on there either on the end, like this portion, this is the left one, this is the right one, or they'll be stamped on the side, or they'll have somewhere in the base of this R and L. What that means, R means right, and this would be the right pedal that goes to the right crank arm. And the easiest way for me to explain it, instead of like righty, lefty, that kind of thing, threaded, is when you put the pedal in there gently, by any means, when you pedal backwards, you'll feel it eventually engage. When you're pedaling it backwards on either side, that's tightening the pedal up. So it's all the way tight. And it should go on this smoothly. It shouldn't have to bear any pressure on it. Then you have a pedal wrench, which is a 15mm wrench, or you can use a crescent if need be. And then you just keep on going backwards to give it a good snug to make it tight. Don't overbear this. Because what you got is usually a steel or high tensile steel or titanium spindle of your pedal going into aluminum. Aluminum is a softer material than most of the pedals steel. So these guys can booger up these guys in a heartbeat. What came very interesting to me is this pedal on the left side wasn't threaded in all the way, and it was stiff. And I actually had to use the pedal wrench to actually take it off, and it had a pretty good level of stiffness as I was taking it off. When you take it off, it's basically if you pedal forward. Put the pedal wrench in there, and you pedal forward, and that's how you loosen it up, like so. So backwards to tighten, forwards to loosen. Come on, right, like so. Some pedals out there will take a Allen key, and the Allen key will be going on the inside of the crank arm to get to it to tighten and loosen. So that's the other type out there. You usually find those in a little bit nicer upper end pedals, or your clipless pedals will be that way. What came to me to mind is this one on the left side here. Had a little bit of a white aluminum chocking, as I call it. As you can tell the difference, this one's darker, oil and grease has gone in, and this one has like contaminant and breeze on there. This looks like it's taken some of the material off of the actual crank arm. So there lies the issue. For me to get to the crank arms, it's easier for me to take the wheels off. So I'm just dealing with the frame, less things to combat to get to it. And we're just gonna pop this off and take a look, closer look at the threads and see if they've been compromised on this one. And see if we need to thread chase it. So with a lot of these, now the threads, even if it gets cross-threaded in there, you can still get a pedal on this and be secure. You just need to make sure there's enough material. Sometimes there's a situation where it's just bored out completely. And if that's the case, your crank arm is toast, it's gone. I mean, you can't, let me take that back. They do have what they call a helicoil. You can basically drill out the threads on it and put the helicoil, which is basically a big shim with threads, to put in there. I'm not a big fan because you're kind of like putting a band-aid on something. People will do it on the high-end bikes just to preserve or save their high-end bike. So this is the left-hand crank that we're questioning, and what we're looking at is the threads. Going back to our threads here, and if you look, it's kind of like not as clean. And if I was pedaling forward, it would be right way to tighten it. So what happened on this guy, he started it and it caught and got cross-threaded. Now this is reverse thread, yeah. And it just kind of boogered up. So he only had it in about that far. So what we could do is you go from the back side. Remember, you can't switch the pedals. You got to do the same pedal on this one. And you can use the pedal itself to clean up those threads by going backwards. So this will have good threading. All right. Once you get that out. And sometimes you want to put a little bit of oil in here. Clean those threads up to make it a little bit cleaner and shinier. So sometimes we want to use a little bit of cleaning agent, greaser. Clean those up. And most bike shops will have a thread tap, and it will be a left-handed reverse thread tap. I have not yet got one. This is only like the third one I've had to deal with in the last 3 years, and they're expensive. So what I'm gonna do is grab a pair of pedals that I'm gonna be putting on this bike. And double check, make sure I can get the new pedals on there without any issues. So that's R, so that's the right thread, and this is the L, which is the opposite. So if I'm thinking on the left side of the bike, I'm gonna go forward, and what you wanna do is put a little bit of grease on these, and see if I can get that to line up. You can see it. Oh. Since it was cross-threaded, it might be a little better. Get that on there. And this one does have the Allen wrench, so I can tighten it up this way. So that feels a lot smoother. So for the end consumer, which is the person that buys this bike, kind of try to do a solid for them, so it makes it a little bit easier when they get the bike, so they don't cross thread it. So what I did is got a nice cleaner threads and thread it through. And make sure, once I got it on there once, that if they get this at home. Okay. That. Yeah, pretty easy. So you can do it by hand. So the first time I had to use a wrench to kind of just get it to seat in there, but now this time. So I'm pretty confident now, whoever gets this bike will not have a problem putting that pedal on. So, and there's another little thing, these particular cranks, which this didn't have on it, have kind of like an indentation. And the indentation is for these little boogers. It's like a little spacer. And that little spacer keeps for, you know, makes it not get stuck on there forever. And you don't get that cold wheel contact. This is so much harder to do when it's on a bike. Oh. There we go. So looks like something like that. A little bit cleaner. So that's kind of the pedals 101. So I was able to clean that one up. It wasn't able to, it'd be in a world of hurt. The front one seemed to be okay. It is not as clean either. It looks like it's boogered up a little bit, but right off the bat you can see. And these pedals there's a smidgen stiff, but you know, I was able to get that on there without any issues. So to recap, right pedal, right crank arm, R and R, right foot, that's how you'd remember how to put it, you know, to tighten it up going backwards. If you want to be technical about it, the right-handed is your typical right-handed thread, right to tighten it, left to loosen it. The left pedal is opposite. So instead of getting all confused up with that, just remember, going back pedaling tightens it, going forward loosens it. So, and also another little trick that I have, some of these little boogers are really tight, and especially if I'm using the Allen wrench, when it's on the bike, I usually try to use this own force against it. So I'll put the Allen wrench here, like underneath the bike, and that way I'm forcing it down, like that direction. When you're forcing it down, then you're loosening it, and you're not gonna, the likelihood of you smacking into something in the frame is less likely. That's kind of the trick of getting it off. If you come across a booger one, it's really hard. So that's pedals 101. There'll probably more to come to show about that, the cleats and so forth, but that's the basics with pedals, and just wanted to go over the boogered part of the crank and how to kind of address that, clean it. If you have a problem with putting it on and it's like, don't want to force it all the way and got like a couple threads in there, take to the bike shop. The bike shop will take like 2 seconds. They got a thread chaser, and sometimes they're a little bit stiff at first, but they have a feel, a hand feel, and that's where years of experience you can't just pull that out of the box and here you go. It's one of those things you just have to experience. And if you get do get a thread that's crossed, then they have tabs to go through the back end of it and clean it up, then you get that pedal back on there. So about 9 times out of 10, you can save that crank. But if you force it and take it too far and you sit it on there and it's all forced, you weaken those threads in there. And I've seen this happen, that all of a sudden that pedal just comes right out and strips it. Then you have basically a hollow, no threads left in there to grab onto. And that means your crank arm's toast, or you have to have a helo coil put into it. So that's what I got for pedals so far, and I'll let you know, and I'll come across with anything else. Other than that, thank you for spending time with me, and I hope that helps.